Welcome to the video class for week 13 of Sci 102A, and that's general psychology. So we're here in week 13, and I'm on our Blackboard shell. I am going to share the screen so that everybody can see what I'm looking at. So I've got the announcements here. Week 13 is an opportunity for us to engage in discussion, which I know that you all have already started to do. But I'm going to look at the week 14 content to make sure that we're all ready to go and on the same page. Congratulations, by the way, we are nearing the end of the course, and it's been so wonderful to work with all of you. I'm really excited to see how you wrap things up and to review your final assignments. So you'll notice that week 13 is an online discussion, and that is our last online discussion. Week 14 will give us the opportunity to complete content for a quiz. So week 14 quiz will cover chapters 11, 13, and 14. And what I'll do, as I typically do for quizzes, is post an announcement with some information regarding specific topic areas that you can focus on as you finish up your reading in chapters 11, 13, and 14 to prepare for the quiz in week 14. Focus areas for week 14 will be personality and social psychology. Social psychology is really interesting. CCU at the undergraduate level offers a course in social psychology through College of Adult and Graduate Studies. And it's really fun to look into topics like helping behaviors, the bystander effect, why we do what we do, or why we might help or not help somebody else. So for the topic, week 14, we'll be able to dive into some of those along with concepts of personality. Chapter 13 will give us information about the treatment of psychological disorders, while the reading in week 12 was related just to an article here. Okay, so we had the chance to dive into that. And then the reading in week 13 hits on psychological disorders. So first we need the content on psychological disorders before we can move into the treatment of psychological disorders. And my hope is that as we go over this a little bit in this video presentation, that this will get you ready to go for the final paper, which is in week 15, which is sooner and sooner. A good thing to work on right now would be an outline for your final paper. So making sure that you've got your sources squared away, that you're very clear on your topic and you've honed in on that specific area of interest. That would be a really good way to get started for this week 15 final assignment so that it doesn't all just hit you on that final week. We have discussed this a little bit previously, but I will share information here on this video, just going over again the expectations for the week 15 final paper. This is an exciting opportunity because you do get to select a topic based on something that we've talked about in this course. And a lot of you have shared your topic ideas with me, which is wonderful. I'm really excited for your papers. And if anybody wants to talk about really diving into that topic or picking a particular area of emphasis within their selected topic area, please let me know. I'm happy to chat with you about that one-on-one as well, or we can communicate via email about it. So you'll see here that this is a research paper on the topic of your choice. And you will want to hit on the Christian perspective, and that would mean that we're integrating scripture along with our source citation. We're not just talking about what scholars in the field think or what we think about our topic, but instead we're talking about what God says and what God thinks about our topic. So that's an opportunity for you to tie in biblical perspectives and biblical references. So the week 15 final paper does come with a rubric, and you can click View Rubric here. And the rubric includes an introduction and conclusion, obviously. For the introduction, the best way to develop this is just really to give a clear picture of what your paper will be about and why you've chosen that topic and why it matters, why it's interesting, and how it connects to the bigger picture of the field of psychology and what can be done with these connections as we function as individuals and as believers in everyday society. The thesis statement is just going to be a really clear statement. It's generally a sentence that introduces your selected topic and explains what your paper will focus on. So you might want to select a couple key focus areas, such as, let's say if I'm doing generalized anxiety disorder, I could say for my thesis statement, the study of generalized anxiety disorder presents us with opportunities to examine common symptoms, discuss treatment options, and review the diagnosis from a biblical perspective. That would be a good way to start out for a thesis statement for your introduction. And then your conclusion is going to be an opportunity for you to really wrap up this subject by restating the main ideas in your intro and by restating the main points from your thesis statement. So there is an introduction and conclusion grading category here on the rubric. You may have written or you may have read or reviewed a paper that just kind of drops off. So it's getting into the content, you're tracking with the author, you're with it, and then all of a sudden references. And you think, wait a minute, I feel like somebody just kind of stopped in the middle of this. And that's the idea of a strong and solid conclusion. And in that conclusion, a really good way to wrap up with a paper like this one is to emphasize again the biblical perspective in connection with your topic, to talk about the real world implications, the big picture. The thesis statement is a really powerful chance to do that. And then the conclusion can follow up with a restating of those ideas. Hi, Emily. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Well, it's so good to see you. I've been
too.
recording this content. Several people have not been able to make it, unfortunately, but I'm just hitting on the ideas for the paper so that the recording can be posted. And it's so nice to see you. How has everything been going?
Good. I just had surgery last week, so just kind of recovering from that. So yeah.
How are you feeling?
Pretty good. Just kind of, getting back in the swing of things for sure.
So glad you're here. Thank you for hopping on.
Yeah.
So Emily, basically I was just talking about the idea of the final paper as really pretty exciting because we've all had the opportunity to hone in on a topic, and it's kind of fun to pick your topic. Lots of classes, they tell you, hey, here's what you're writing about, and then you kind of have to deal with it whether you like it or not. This is a really cool opportunity to pick something that's really intriguing for you, because that way the paper is going to be more fun. So the idea of the thesis statement, the intro and conclusion, and how the conclusion can restate the main ideas of the thesis. And I have a rubric up on the screen. Are you able to see that?
I just see like the not the rubric. I just see like the due date and all that.
Okay, here, let me go. Thank you. See, I'm so glad you're here. How about now?
There we go. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. This is really pretty straightforward. Development and evidence would just be the fact that you're using the source citation. You're doing it with the APA format. There's only a minimum of 4 peer-reviewed sources that are required for this. And I did post that video lecture about finding academic journal articles in the CCU library. Were you able to see that one?
Did you send it in an email?
Yeah, in an announcement. And if not, that's okay. I just want to make sure that everybody has it in case they want to access it. Some people feel really familiar and comfortable with the CCU online library, but other people might need a little review. So I just want to
I think
everybody.
it's pretty simple once you get the hang of it, for sure.
Super. Okay, awesome. Well, what I will do is just for the sake of the people who are going to tune in and watch this later on, I am going to share on the announcements, on the announcements page right here. And scroll down. There's so many, right? This has been a long, this semester, it just stretches out. So it's really exciting. We're wrapping up. Where is that? You said you did receive it?
I thought I did, yeah.
Isn't that funny? I thought so too. I'll make sure I find it. And you know what I'll probably do is just send it out again because it never hurts to have it. But it's good to hear you feel pretty comfortable with the online library.
Yeah, once you like kind of get the criterias done and know what you want to search for and just kind of play around with it a little bit. That's what I had to do.
Perfect. Okay, well, what I'm going to do actually right now is academic peer-reviewed sources. I'm just going to send this out again so that everybody has it for sure, for sure. And Emily, I was just saying it's week 13. So there's only 2 weeks left in this class. And obviously there's a discussion this week. Those are generally pretty straightforward. So the main idea to focus on really would just be the quiz next week. And then I will send out an announcement for some areas to focus on for that quiz as well. And then the final paper, and that's going to be it. So obviously development and evidence, we just want to make sure that we're meeting that minimum source citation requirement and that we're not just stating our opinions, but we're also providing background or reasoning for our selections. Critical thinking, again, breaking that down, not just making a blanket statement, but showing that we're analyzing from different perspectives. We're thinking about the complexity of these topics. The language and the conventions and mechanics are pretty similar. It just means watching for those fragments, those run-on sentences, making sure that we're using punctuation correctly, that it's not reading like a diary entry or a text message, but that we are doing a formal written academic submission. And then for the critical self-reflection, you do want to make a part of this paper near the conclusion an opportunity to think about what you've learned through your research process and through the course in general, and how you might integrate it in your life or in your future study or in the future work that you want to do, and what the benefit has been for you, and any remaining questions that you might have. That's a good thing to dive into for this part. And then obviously the biblical perspective, you just want to make a really clear section for that. And that will just be the integration of scripture and kind of looking at it through the lens of what God thinks about the topic instead of just what researchers think or just what we think. Okay. So that's it for the rubric. I just feel like this final paper, we've all been waiting and waiting, and you know, the semester feels long sometimes, and now it has snuck up on us.
I know, only to think like there's 2 weeks left. Like, oh, wow.
I know, and it's been so fun. I've loved getting to know you guys. I'm gonna miss this class. We've got such a great group, but I think we're gonna finish strong here. So the worst mistake we can make is just saying, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, and then ending up kind of in that crunch. And we all do it, but I think planning ahead helps us to avoid that. So that's the one thing that I was emphasizing on this video before you got here. Other than that, we are in luck because you are here in time for me to pull up a little presentation. Do you see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Awesome. So, because we still have about 15 minutes. So this is one of my favorite topics. And this is the concept of abnormal psychology. So we're thinking about mental illness of all different types. I know that we have been reading up on this. It's obviously integrated throughout our text because this is one of the main focus areas in the field of psychology. But if it sounds good to you, I'll just go through each of these different diagnosis categories and talk a little bit about their manifestations. And then Emily, if you want to weigh in or mention an example or add anything, please do. Cool?
Will do.
Awesome. Okay. So a slide that I like is the idea of the 3 Ds, because the reality is we all have stuff, right? We all have quirks. We all get worried. We all feel low. We all have our moments of hyper excitement and energy or distraction, struggling to focus. So when we're wondering about whether an issue is truly a mental health concern, we want to look at these 3 words that all start with D. So it's the 3 Ds: distress, dysfunction, and danger. So distress is my behavior causing me or someone else distress. So an example, just since it does fall into a psychological diagnosis category as well, let's say that a person is drinking alcohol very frequently. And the person is wondering, is this a concern? Is this an addiction? Is this an unhealthy behavior? Or is it just something that I'm doing socially and something that's no big deal? And the person could ask, is my behavior causing me or someone else distress? So is my use of alcohol on this regular basis causing me to say things I don't mean, or to, fall down a couple stairs and get hurt? Or is there something that is harming myself or someone else? And obviously, that's not the only deciding factor for whether something is healthy, but it is one. So it's good to consider that. The next one would be dysfunction. And that question would be, is this issue impairing my function in daily life? So to go along with the substance or alcohol abuse example, a person could say, is this drinking of alcohol causing me to struggle to get to work in the morning because of not feeling well? Is it causing me to have to leave my car somewhere because I'm not capable of driving home and then have to go back and get it another time? Is this interfering with my well-being? So the reason that OCD is there in parentheses is because obsessive compulsive disorder, obviously, a pretty common, popular topic, and lots of people will be very organized and maybe they like things really clean. So they'll say, oh, I'm so OCD. I totally have OCD. But in reality, OCD is a very serious psychological diagnosis, and actually not many people have it. So throwing that term around can be pretty hurtful to somebody who does have it and who struggles significantly with it. For instance, a common compulsive behavior that might come with OCD diagnosis is frequent and unnecessary hand washing. So obviously it's good to wash our hands, right? And that's been true. That's been a recommendation from the CDC since long before the coronavirus situation. So nobody would ever say that we shouldn't wash our hands. But when a person is having to get up during a meal or get up during a work meeting because of a compulsion to have to wash their hands because they feel so contaminated for a reason that is not accurate or is not in touch with reality, that's where you start to see the dysfunction with the hand washing behavior. And that's where you start to question, is this behavior causing me impairment? And that would be another way to weigh and decide, is this healthy or unhealthy? Danger, is my behavior safe? So danger does align a little bit with the distress component. Is my behavior harming me? Once again, with the example of the alcohol abuse, if a person is finding themselves driving when they've had too much alcohol or getting into some other situation with people who are not trustworthy, and it becomes hazardous to them, that's just another indicator that we do have a problem in this situation. So this is kind of a scale that we might use to evaluate. For instance, if a person's having anxiety is pretty common for really anybody. I don't think there's anybody who goes through life without experiencing a period of anxiety of some kind or feeling worried about something. But we know that there's an anxiety disorder and that there's a mental health issue when we see these things presenting themselves. And that would be the distress component. I'm not functioning anymore, or I'm doing something, or this is manifesting in a way that is unsafe for me or for somebody else. Okay, so for anxiety disorders, a common one, as I was just mentioning, generalized anxiety disorder, or we'll say GAD. This is a person who feels anxiety about a lot of different things and feels anxiety nearly all the time. And this is different from the idea of panic disorder. Somebody with generalized anxiety may also have episodes of panic, and that could be a comorbid condition or another type of diagnosis. But generalized anxiety disorder is kind of that slow hum of, I always feel this fear and this concern and this worry and this perseveration, but I'm not necessarily curled up in the corner hyperventilating. And so for people with generalized anxiety disorder, their experience may be really miserable, and yet lots of people might not know what they're going through. There are lots of options for treatment for this. The most common one we've talked a lot about in this course is cognitive behavior therapy, helping a person to reframe their thoughts and to be more conscious of the messages that they're sending to themselves and their thought lives. And that is biblical in the sense that, the Bible tells us to take every thought captive and that we have the mind of Christ. And so it is in alignment with that. CBT is an approach where we're recognizing that our thoughts impact our feelings, which then impact our actions. So if we can change our thoughts, we can reduce our anxiety. We can tell ourselves, I am safe. I am safe. Instead of asking what could go wrong, we can ask ourselves, what if it goes right? What if it goes well? And so obviously, cognitive behavior therapy is not the only thing that can help with generalized anxiety disorder. Some people do benefit from medication. It's all a case by case basis. Some people benefit from other types of mindfulness. So for instance, that progressive muscle relaxation where we're tensing up and then we're relaxing. We're doing practices like that. Physical activity could be helpful, maybe some changes in diet. And obviously, by far and away, most importantly, prayer and supplication, working with the Lord, working through all of this anxiety, coming to a place of trust in Him. So any combination of those, but obviously God is the great physician, and so He is the wonderful counselor. So phobia is obviously a fear of a specific situation. There's a spider, it's kind of creepy, but most people are pretty familiar with phobias. Agoraphobia, that would be fear of a social place, particularly crowded places. So for somebody who's dealing with this, they may struggle greatly to even go to a grocery store. Interestingly, with the coronavirus situation and all of the closures that we've experienced, and I know in some places more things are closed than others, so it just depends where you are. But a lot of people have had extended period of time, over a year, of not being exposed to crowds or to even many public places at all. And so it should be kind of interesting as we're all eventually merging back into regular society and arriving to a crowded concert or event or movie theater or grocery store, what that will be like, especially for people who have struggled with this over time, because we've not had the exposure, which really can increase the anxiety. I want to hit on OCD again here, because I do find this visual really helpful. So in OCD, we've got obsessive compulsive disorder, and the O, obsession, refers to the thought. So for somebody, we'll just go with a traditional example of the hand washing. For somebody who's having an obsession about this, their thought might be, my hands are dirty. I have bacteria or germs or viruses on my hands. I need to wash my hands or I will be contaminated and filthy. I will be sick. I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to die. A person might have those intense thoughts. And the only thing for that person that can help those thoughts to go away and help them to ultimately feel safe and clean and secure again and relaxed would be to wash the hands, oftentimes for a certain period of time or with a particular temperature of water or a certain type of soap. To kind of meet that rigid thinking and that rigid need. So the obsession is the thought, the compulsion is the behavior. So that would be the hand washing. It's what you're doing. The behavior stops or simmers down the obsessive thought for a period of time. For some people, that might be a couple hours. For other people, it might be just a few minutes, but the compulsion shuts up, so to speak, the obsession. So that's why this cycle continues. We have the trigger or the spike moving into the distress signal in the brain, and we have these overwhelming thoughts and urges to do something. That's that bottom box right there. And then the ritual, which is the behavior, such as the hand washing, does eliminate or reduce that worry or that fear coming from that obsession. And then we have that short-term relief. Okay, I'm clean, I'm safe, I'm healthy. but then it begins to come back up. And that either could be simply a mental and psychological thing where it's arising again, or there could be a situation that triggers it, such as having to touch a doorknob or a keyboard. And then once again, we're in this vicious cycle. Do you think that visual is helpful? Yes?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's a very nice laid out version of it.
Good. I love it too. I'm glad. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. So it makes it a lot more fun. This cycle helped me because I think we all have a general idea of what OCD is, but seeing it laid out, it really can come to the point where a person might be doing that behavior, even every couple minutes, and it can cause some major problems. We'll hit on, obviously, depression. There are many different types of depression, and that will be in the textbook extensively. We have gone over that. But major depressive disorder might be the most common one that we'll hear about. And that would have to go on for longer than 2 weeks. But we're losing the energy. We may be losing the appetite or eating too much. We may be sleeping not enough or sleeping too much. We may want to withdraw from friends and from family. And unfortunately, obviously, for some people, this can even lead to suicidal ideation and some of those really dark places. So it's important to catch these and have some of that talk therapy or counseling. Some of that cognitive behavior therapy could be helpful for this as well. Dialectical behavior therapy is an approach that can be cool to look into a little bit more. It has to do a lot with mindfulness and with managing hard emotions. So that's oftentimes used to support people with borderline personality disorder. But I would posit that some of the DBT approaches, which are that mindfulness of sensory experiences or hot or cold or sense, kind of that aromatherapy to snap you out of that foggy mental state could be helpful for some of these symptoms as well. So there are many different types of seasonal affective, obviously would be influenced for people who are having less sun exposure and less time outside and therefore perhaps less physical activity and start to feel depressed in the fall or the winter months. I think a lot of people may struggle with some of that seasonal component. Schizophrenia. This would go along with oftentimes people having hallucinations. They may have paranoia and feel that somebody's after them. They may have delusions that they are the president, or they may try running for mayor. They might be hearing voices or getting angry at someone who's not there, or thinking that someone's out to get them, trying to kill them. You may also see periods of a really flat affect or almost kind of some of that depression. So a person who's not really engaged and then suddenly may move into, that would be the negative symptoms is what they call it, and then may move into more positive symptoms and completely lose touch with reality and decide that they're a lawyer and create business cards to pass out. And it's not that they're trying to mess around with people, but they genuinely in that moment believe that that's who they are. Or I'm Marilyn Monroe, or some people will claim to be other celebrities or figures. And these delusions can get very serious, obviously. So people with schizophrenia may benefit a lot from medication as well as therapy and treatment to manage the symptoms. The personality disorders, that's what we'll wrap up with. This is a lot of information, obviously. So anybody who watches the video, you can pause the slide here and read through this. And I know that you've got this in your course text as well. But one of the most frequently discussed or studied personality disorders would be borderline personality disorder. This looks different in anybody who has it. However, the biggest manifestation that you'll generally see would just be really significant problems with emotional stability. So frequent and rapid and intense mood swings, and then significant problems with interpersonal relationships. So kind of that hot and cold, worshiping somebody and then completely hating them. You might see some of that. You might see some self-harm or even some promiscuous behavior trying to seek attention. You may see lying. There may be rage or anger episodes. This is a disorder, as I mentioned previously, that responds oftentimes really well to dialectical behavior therapy. And that is that DBT approach. They talk about the wise mind and how to balance out options and accept the fact that two things can be true at one time. So I don't have to fear abandonment, because even though a person has left on a trip, that person still loves me. So I don't have to go into a downward spiral. That person is still present for me in my life, even if they're not right here. Antisocial personality disorder. Oftentimes in our culture, we'll think of this as, oh, that's what would happen with somebody who is a serial killer. But it doesn't have to be the case. Instead, it would just be somebody who doesn't demonstrate conscience. This would be somebody who may frequently lie and basically is taking action to do anything that will profit them or benefit them. And number 7 down here is the biggest part. We see that lack of remorse. So really not sorry. We're not seeing empathy. You might see frequent assaults or fights, impulsivity. And this is the one, you might hear people throw around the term sociopath. We're talking about people with some of these symptoms. So this can be a lot of people who are in the justice system who have assault or theft charges or some of these really intense things that are repetitive could be dealing with some of this. And then finally, the narcissistic personality disorder. So this would be the person, narcissist, we know the story of somebody who is in love with themselves. So kind of worshiping the self, needing to be admired, lacking empathy for other people. So feeling that I'm the best, feeling that I'm special. I have to be special. No attention that I get is ever enough. And I might take advantage of other people in order to get more attention. I may have a lot of jealousy and kind of that importance for myself is that grandiosity. I'm exaggerating everything. I expect people to celebrate and praise me. And then when they don't, I may have a really big problem with them or feel that they're not paying enough attention to me. And obviously this can be really hard and can cause a lot of serious problems. So the book does cover other mental health conditions, but for the sake of time, those are the ones that we're going to go over today. Do you have any questions, Emily, since you're here, about anything with class?
I don't think I do. Is this our last video session, or do we have one more?
We'll do a video class on the final week.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's about it then. Yeah.
So good to see you. Hang in there, feel better, take it easy, and looking forward to your final paper coming up.
Great. Yeah, it'll be fun. Woo.
Awesome. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.